Come in, sit down. We don't stand on attention here. Well, not when we're both fully clothed like this, what? Sit down, man, sit down. God, I shouldn't have to ask you again. This interview isn't going very well for you so far, is it? I am sitting. Well, I suppose that's your story and you're sticking to it. So why don't you, instead of contradicting me like a damn flim-flam man full of finangling and fudge gumption, tell me exactly why I should give you this job and ergo my money, instead of some shaved chimp I nursed from a baby, or a stuffed ostrich, or anything else that is most likely infinitely better than you at the position. Right, well, as I understand it, the position is for an admin assistant. As you understand it, I don't know if you're capable of simply understanding the necessity for me to wear extraordinarily brightly coloured undergarments, let alone the complexities of what we do here at Flap Wappy Corp. I can tell you that I was the admin assistant to the CEO at 3M for 5 years. Go on then. What? You said you can tell me, you impertinent pile of bad smells, so come on then, tell me. Well, I was the admin assistant to the CEO of 3M for 5 years. 3M? What on earth is that? Is that some sort of terrorist organisation or some anti-government computer flim-flammers? Because if they are, I will have to ask you to leave. I do not truck with wanton flim-flammery. I had it once in the house and it got all over the carpet. The wife still elbows me in the solar plexus every time she sees the stain. No, 3M, they manufacture Scotch tape, amongst other things. I see. So they're perverts, are they? I once came home to find my daughter, several of her friends, a pregnant elk and the Siberian mailman Gregor, all Scotch taped together, only partially clothed in my living room. They said it was some staged protest against my refusal to buy cheese, but I knew they were perverts there and then. Doused a lot of them in some week-old rum punch the wife had made for old Teddy Limworth's hip replacement celebration. Right, no, well, they're not perverts. They manufacture stationery and things. I knew a fella, lost all his hair after a trip to Peru, claimed it was because he angered the gods by flashing his genitals in an alpaca on Machu Picchu, but I knew it was that Peruvian musk shower gel he insisted on eating. Ever been to Peru, you despicable heap of bat puke covered in skin? No, but I have always wanted to, though. Not what I asked, but thank you for volunteering the information. I have precisely 2 tickets here, leaving for Peru tonight. You will be on this plane with my son Plankton. You will go to Peru and slip this envelope into a pig satchel carried by this man, Lenka Kirkbaumer. He'll be wearing a paisley pork pie hat and be eyeballing the wild turkeys with rough abandon. I'm not sure I can. You see, tonight... I haven't finished. Don't interrupt. I then need you to head by helicopter boat to Nairobi. Nairobi, you say? Oh, I'm sorry, there's been some mistake. I must be off. No mistake. I know you're really the umbrella man. I recognised it the moment you came in. The hop gave you away. You can't play games with me. You're in this now, and so you better get used to it, or at midnight I press this button, my knees detonate, and all your ex-wives get pictures of Mount St. Tongue in the bath pleasuring an otter. Okay, Latrifle, you have my attention. Damn you. I thought I'd gotten away with my cunning ruse to infiltrate the agency dressed as a large ham at the Christmas function, but I always was no match for you, even after I changed my face by mail and had my name changed by a plastic surgeon in Dalsthorpe. Exactly. There's no pulling the flannel over my eyes, boy. So let me tell you the plan. That was part 1 of Spy Face, a new 573-part serial commissioned, paid for, cast and recorded just moments before we sacked the person responsible. We are presenting it to you today so we don't lose too much money on the venture and we don't breach any contracts and have to return all those polar bear husks to David Hasselhoff for remuneration. And now on Radio Flange Goblet, home of Push-Up Polly, the pumped-up parakeet from Paraguay, and the Who's Leonard ass moment. It's the after-movie diner, which this week comes from a rotund man's stomach, a lovely little bistro in Soligosk, run by a consortium of topless bearded ladies and staffed entirely with people who have read 50 Shades of Grey and actually enjoyed it. If you can get through the first course without crying, they give you a monogrammed butt plug and a lifetime subscription to Angling Times. Hello, hi, and welcome to the 102nd episode of the After Movie Diner, and it's a wonderful, wonderful episode. It's just fantastic. Ow. So let's get it started. How about that then? First up, I think what we've got is... Ooh, that's painful. Here comes the postman. I wonder what he has for me. There's something in his big brown sack. I wonder what could it be. Well, I hope the bills it lacks and instead brings me some listener feedback. Or maybe, just maybe, a big bag of crack. Oh, here comes the postman. I wonder what he has for me. We've got an email from your friend and mine, David Brighton, goes by the name of Icklebell on Twitter, and he writes about the Back to the Future opening, which was a question that was brought up last episode, about if there were any other films in the history of cinema that started with... Oh, that's right in my thigh. That started with, the little contraptions and inventions and so on. And he writes, John, this truly is a well-established trope with a history as long as your arm. A couple of highlights off the top of my head include Gremlins, although the juicer turned out to be handy, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, and there are many more all the way back to Metropolis. And then he says, cue smug arsehole mode, Dave Brighton. Well... No need to be smug, sir. You were requested to write in and tell me if you knew of any, and you did. So thank you for that. And a copy of Hulk Hogan's book, Why I've Done It with Leopards, will be winging its way to you shortly. And now let's go over to the Facebook page where I put out a question this week all about Woody Allen films, as that is what we're covering. And we got a response from the wonderful Robert C. Hoffman. He wrote on our Facebook page, my favorite Woody Allen film is Another Woman from 1988. Runners-up include Annie Hall, Take the Money and Run, Broadway Danny Rose. I don't know, a lot of them are just excellent. Z-League is a masterpiece. The Purple Rose of Cairo, Hannah and Her Sisters, masterworks. The run between Sleeper and Crimes and Misdemeanors is one of the greats of cinema history. And a lot of the others range from pretty terrific to, at the very least, interesting, except for anything else with Jason Biggs, unwatchable, and the low point of his films of the 2000s. His personal life aside, one of the all-time great filmmakers. We also had, there really is rather a lot of blood, some comments on Twitter, like this one, from Alan. I'm not joking, his name is Alan, or at Old Dark House. He writes, my favourite Woody Allen film changes every time I think about it, but today I will go for Broadway Danny Rose. He also said, my favourite movie about a troubled or struggling artist is Bob Fosse's Lenny. So that was a response from Alan on Twitter. And I don't think we have anything else. Let me see. No. So now a bit of diner news. How can you refuse the after movie diner news? This is the news, this is the news. How can you refuse the after movie diner news? Well, you can't, can you? Well, it was an unrivaled pleasure, and I was exceptionally honoured to host the Q&A for the Maniac Cop 2 screening on Friday night at the landmark Sunshine in New York City with Bill Lustig, the director of Maniac Cop 2, in attendance. Anyone who listens frequently will know that Mr. Lustig was a guest on the show a few episodes ago. and invited me to come down and host it, which I did on Friday night, and it was absolutely fantastic. And I wanted to let everyone know that if you haven't had the chance to see Maniac Cop 2 on the big screen yet, there are still some places in the country where it will be playing between now and Christmas. For example, on November 20th, you can see it at the Alamo Drafthouse Westlakes in San Antonio, Texas. On November 22nd and 23rd at midnight, you can see it at the Coolidge Corner Theatre in Boston, Massachusetts, with a Q&A with director William Lustig on Friday night only. November 23rd, Alamo Drafthouse Lakeline in Austin, Texas. On November 23rd as well, the Alamo Drafthouse Vintage Park, that's in Houston, Texas. November 29th, you can see it at the Alamo Drafthouse Littleton in Littleton, Colorado. November 30th, the Alamo Drafthouse Loudon in Ashburn, Virginia. And January 18th next year, you can see it at the Capitol Theatre in Cleveland, Ohio. I would strongly recommend you get to those screenings. The updated print that they have of Maniac Cop 2 is absolutely fantastic, and it's really great that people are rediscovering this sort of oddball, fun, goofy, classic genre-bending movie of the early 90s. As it really is. It's Bill Lustig's favourite movie, but it really is a great film, and should be checked out if you haven't seen it before. You can also pick up the Blu-ray of those films, Maniac Cop 2 and Maniac Cop 3, which is coming from Blue Underground November 19th. You can read our reviews of those Blu-rays and reviews of the movies over at aftermoviediner.com. Now, people might not know this, but everything is now going through aftermoviediner.com, so please do bookmark that website. Absolutely everything. Our show, Dr. Action Show, any news, reviews, interviews, press releases I get from studios, all sorts of stuff will now be available on aftermoviediner.com. And the latest thing we have on there is a review of the Maniac Cop 2 and Maniac Cop 3 Blu-rays. So please go do check that out and bookmark aftermoviediner.com, the site. You can also check out the photographs from the Q&A event over on our Facebook page, www.facebook.com/aftermoviediner. I would like to urge everyone as well to go to YouTube, and a film which we covered all way back on like the third or fourth episode. I don't know when I interviewed the director, but it was very early on in the podcast. A Year After Infection is now up on YouTube for free. So please go do check out the independent zombie film, A Year After Infection. It really is worth it. It's a great little movie. So please do go and check that out over on YouTube, A Year After Infection. So I think that's all the bits of business we've got to do this week. And so now, on with the main part of the show.
Gotta poop, gotta puke, gotta pee simultaneously. Gotta poop, gotta puke, gotta pee simultaneously. I gotta poop, gotta puke, gotta pee simultaneously. Yeah, I gotta poop, gotta puke, gotta pee simultaneously. Well, they haven't invented a toilet yet for all the stuff that I have to get out of my body all at once. Looks like I'll be cleaning up this bathroom for the next couple of months.
The hilarious song you're hearing at the moment, Gotta Poop, Puke and Pee Simultaneously, is available on the album The Toilet Bowl Cleaners Greatest Poop, Puke and Pee Songs, available currently on iTunes and CD Baby, and also to stream on Spotify. And it's by our guest today, Mr. Matt Farley. Let's have him play us into the show.
This is gonna be one awful mess. I gotta poop, gotta puke, gotta pee simultaneously. I gotta poop, gotta puke, gotta pee simultaneously.
Hello and welcome back to the After Movie Diner, and we're very happy this evening as we have a very special guest on the show today. You may remember him from such hits as Freaky Farley, Monsters, Marriage and Murder in Manch Vegas, Don't Let the River Beast Get You, and Local Legends, which this very podcast was honoured to host the commentary for. You may have also heard about him on The Bone Zone, as he is a celebrity guest on there as well. We are very happy to have him back with us in the diner. Writer, actor, independent filmmaker, musician, and now podcast podcast host in his own right, Mr. Matt Farley from Moten Media. How are you doing, sir?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure, sir. It's our pleasure. And why don't you tell everyone about this new podcasting venture that you've embarked upon?
Well, Tom Scalzo and Charlie Roxburgh and I have been big low-budget horror movie fans from the 70s and 80s since college. We've written a few books under the Shock Marathons moniker, and we decided we're going to go back and do an episode of the podcast for each of the movies that we've reviewed in the books, and that probably counts for a couple hundred movies, I'm pretty sure, that we've watched so far. So each month we just spend about 30, 45 minutes on one movie.
And it's great. I have to say, you've hit the ground running. I've listened to the first 2 episodes. Very polished, very tight, very good, very professional sounding. I like them a lot. And funny, because you're talking about these these oddball little rare movies. So, it's good times. I would suggest everyone listen to it if they're not already.
We steal entirely from the After Movie Diner in the format. We're completely inspired by you and decided, hey, let's do what he's doing.
Let's do what he's doing, only better, shorter, more concise, with less rambling and detours. Yeah, I agree. And in that regard, you've been very successful.
Thank you.
And what are we're doing 2 films tonight. Both films were mentioned, I believe, in the Local Legends commentary as being somewhat inspirations to you, but they also happen to be films that I found watching them again last night. I've watched them watched parts of them 2 or 3 times in the lead up to doing this. And I actually found last night, watching them back to back, that there's a lot more similarity and unifying themes between the 2 than I thought. But anyway, what are the 2 movies, dude? What are the 2 movies that we're doing?
Stardust-Memories and Deconstructing-Harry, and I felt the same way. I watched Harry yesterday, and I just kept on saying in my notes, just like Stardust-Memories. I probably wrote that 6 different times throughout the movie. Yeah,
I mean, they're different films in tone, but they have similar things going on in them. I think we'll do them chronologically. We'll start with Stardust and then and go from there. So, did you want to do a quick rundown, sir, of just what the plot is for people who don't know and some of the people who are involved as well?
Yeah, the general plot for Stardust Memories is Woody Allen stars as Sandy Bates. He's a filmmaker very much like Woody Allen. And I don't know about you, but I just wish he called himself Woody Allen. What do you feel?
Yeah, I don't know about that. I mean, I'm happy for him to have a different name. I sort of, people playing themselves, is a double-edged sword. I think that, and this, one of the themes between this and Deconstructing-Harry has a lot to do with his outside persona to the general public. And a lot of what has been leveled at him by critics is that, he just writes himself. All these things are just extensions of himself. Alvy Singer is himself because he's a stand-up comedian, and Sandy Bates is himself, and Harry Block is himself, and so on. And I think what Stardust Memories attempts to do is, yes, it attempts to talk about him, but I also think it's talking about his influences and, his comments on movie making as a whole, not just necessarily experiences that he's had. But I also think Deconstructing-Harry, what's interesting about that one is that is him almost deliberately taking a departure from his usual role in order to say, no, maybe I'm like this. Maybe I'm a hard-drinking, pill-popping, swearing, whore-banging. Both movies are perceptions of Woody Allen, if you know what I mean. But I don't know whether calling him Woody Allen in both movies would have helped. I don't know. What makes you think that? What would have made you happy about that?
No, you make very good points there, but
I make a rambling point. Yeah,
I guess it's true that obviously I don't know Woody Allen, and none of the critics who claim think they know him either. So I guess it doesn't make sense. But I mean, this one even more so than the ones that came before it, Stardust Memories feels very authentic and real. But that could just be a testament to his abilities as a writer.
No, I agree. I think there's definitely some life experience he's drawing on, and he's clearly making comments on his life because of the whole "we like your early funny ones." That's the line that everyone looks at when they go, well, it's just a movie about him. But nothing else that happens in the movie particularly, apart from maybe someone wanting to re-edit the end of his movie, which is a comment maybe on What's New Pussycat, which he famously was very upset with because they changed the ending of his script. Apart from that and the funny ones line, I can't really personally, from what I know about him, point to the magic tricks, I guess. Okay, so no, there is some stuff in there that's him, and I think that's perfectly artistically viable and fine to do that. I don't have a problem with it.
Yeah, he can do whatever he wants. So anyway,
I don't want to make funny movies anymore. They can't force me to. I don't feel funny. I look around the world and all I see is human suffering.
Stardust-Memories, starring Woody Allen.
Did anybody read on the front page of the Times that matter is decaying? Am I the only one that saw that? The universe is gradually breaking down. There's not going to be anything left. I'm not talking about my stupid little films here.
Charlotte Rampling.
I'm a nobody with a one-line part, and I managed to impress you just by sitting around speed reading Schopenhauer.
Yeah, do you understand any of that stuff?
No, but I can fake my way through most situations.
Yeah? Well, I got to tell you, I'm fatally attracted to you, so don't blow it.
Jessica Hopper.
You've been kind of looking at me all night. I mean, tell me if I'm wrong.
Does it bother you?
No. I mean, I was just wondering, what's...
I've never seen such a sexy classical violinist before. I mean, usually they're escaped Hungarians.
Marie-Christine Barreau.
I had a very erotic dream about you last night, I hope you brought your little tiny white cotton socks that I like, because...
Listen, I left my husband.
Really?
Tony Roberts.
Yeah, she could be very fine and funny and bright and wonderful.
Exactly.
2 days a month. The other 28, she was lost.
But what a 2 days, let me tell you.
You are the best kisser.
It was my major in college.
Hey, look, I'm a super intelligent being. By Earth standards, I have an IQ of 1,600, and I can't even understand what you expected from that relationship with Dory.
You prefer Isabel?
There's no comparison. She's a mature woman.
Mature woman? What are you, my rabbi?
You're going to get married.
I guess, it's a package deal. I get a French wife and I get 2 kids.
I've seen it all before. They try to document their private suffering and fob it off as art.
If nothing lasts, why am I bothering to make films or do anything for that matter?
We enjoy your films, particularly the early funny ones.
It's probably one of those killer pigeons.
Yo, get something for it to eat. Folks, what are you doing?
You want to do mankind a real service? Tell funnier jokes.
Yeah, but I've got to find meaning.
The story, it takes place a very short time frame, just one weekend where he's going to this resort where he's going to be honored, and basically through the weekend that he's there, he's thinking back to his old girlfriend Dory, who was very unstable. He's attracted to a violinist who reminds him of Dory, and he's got a French girlfriend who has left her husband for him, and he's basically juggling all those things.
Yeah, he's juggling women, he's juggling the history of his movies, and he's also trying to come to grips with, well, why can't I make movie that comments about life and death and human attitudes and things like that? Why must I be restricted to playing the fool is another kind of question that runs through it.
Yeah, and this movie is just self-indulgent to the max. It's just it seems to me Woody is just saying, you know what, I'm just going to absolutely write exactly what I feel about things, whether it's going to upset people or not. And he portrays his fans as horrible people.
But he also portrays himself as nice to them, and I think in reality it's probably a bit of the reverse. I think the fans are probably really nice and generous, and he's probably a cantankerous old bastard to them.
Maybe he was better in the 70s than he is now.
Yeah, possibly.
Yeah. But it feels very authentic and brave for him to, the people who like his movies quite possibly are that way with him. So it's bold to make a movie that portrays that. it feels very authentic when he's coming out of the car and people are just coming at him with all these requests and whatnot. I bet that happens in his life.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I lots of things went through my head watching the movie. First of all, it was nice to watch. I'd watched it, back when I was collecting all my Woody Allens, sort of in my late teens and 20s, where I was a big fan and I was collecting them all on, it was VHS back then. And I was amassing, I had like his first 30 movies or whatever it was, or his first 25 movies. And I remember watching it back then and not having any idea what to make of it, you know what I mean? And just looking at it as the central conceit of, okay, this is just comments on Woody Allen or whatever. I think as an adult, when you watch it, a lot more stuff comes out. And I actually find it to be now, first of all, it's one of his weirdest movies in terms of everything that's going on. And I delight in that. It's almost a sketch film. Almost. It's almost like there is a lot of aspects to it that are, if you've ever read his essays for The New Yorker and some of his little comedy sketches and things like that in his books, Without Feathers and other things. I forget the other names of the books. But if you've ever read them, there are a lot of sections in this that play out almost exactly like one of those sketches, either seriously or comedically. And I love that aspect to it. I love the black and white aspect to it as well. That's really fantastic. And I love the things that he's exploring. And I don't really mind self-indulgence if what it's giving back to an audience is, pleasing and sharing universal themes. My problem with self-indulgence, if you look at something like this summer's comedy hit, This Is the End, where everyone plays themselves and it appears to be a bunch of in-jokes about things that they know about, and really the only joke we can engage in is, instead of being a weak and feeble hipster, Michael Cera is really a cocaine-doing, insane person, where you're like, okay, that's an idea. But apart from that seemed to be very self-indulgent on look at us all hanging out and making in-jokes, whereas this seems to be self-indulgent in a way where if you're an artist of any kind, or if you're a human who's ever thought about any of the big questions in life or any of the creative questions in life, this will appeal to you. If you give it a chance, the first 15, 20 minutes are a bit of a slog, but it will appeal to you, and therefore I think it has far more value to it, even if it is a self-indulgent project. And I have to say, looking at his going into the 80s run of films, you've got the last of his quote-unquote funny ones, Love and Death. Then you've got Annie Hall, Interiors, Manhattan, and Stardust-Memories. Then A Midsummer Night's Sex Comedy. It must have been, people talk about Woody Allen being up and down and frustrating as a filmmaker now. Imagine being one of his early fans and then sitting through this run of just completely odd movies. They are rich and weird and strange and odd, and they come out of nowhere and they're inventive. And it's a period in time where he gets credit for films like Manhattan and Annie Hall and things like that. But, and Stardust Memories at the time got panned, but Stardust Memories is almost more complex and interesting than either Annie Hall or Manhattan.
Yeah, I think I agree entirely, and I think it's more fully realized than those two movies. Annie Hall kind of loses steam maybe 2/3 of the way into it. When they go to LA, it kind of loses focus, whereas Stardust Memories, it feels like he knew exactly what he wanted from start to finish, and he did it. And this self-indulgence is brave. I wish I could be that brave as to whether he believes or not, to show his fans as horrible, insane people. Is bold, and it's exciting, and to do it in black and white, and it's a thrilling movie, I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, weirdly enough, I find as a film, and it's still a good movie, but it's not one, weirdly enough, that ever stuck out to me in the same way that it did for critics. But actually, I find something like Manhattan almost more self-indulgent in a weird way. It's the movie that Woody famously wanted to reshoot. It's the movie that Woody didn't like. It's whatever. And I can put Manhattan in. It's just Manhattan is neither funny nor particularly serious and not really saying a whole lot. And it's sort of, it's a great New York movie, but it's not particularly a great, it's not saying anything. Whereas Stardust Memories is saying a whole bunch and showing a ton of stuff, but it's also laugh out loud funny. I mean, there's some bits in Stardust Memories that some of his greatest bits. I mean, I love all the stuff with his cohort from Annie Hall in it, curly-haired actor.
Tony Roberts.
Right? Yeah, I love all that stuff. I love the bit where he's having an argument with Dory and the nuns are dancing in the background and he's dressed as like a Catholic priest. I think that's hilarious. And, there's some really nice skits. I love that weird, like, UFO where they're all waiting, all those weird people are waiting in the field at the end for the UFO, and there's all, like, little glimpses of his past and his present and his, dreams and all the rest of it mixed in. It's
yeah, I think like what you say about Manhattan is upon each viewing, I find that Manhattan is more style than substance.
Right.
Versus this one, which is equal style and substance. I mean, it's shot beautifully and in an interesting way, but there's so many more ideas that are just thrown into this movie. It's got 5 movies worth of big ideas just jammed in there. I mean, one touch that, like when he has the photographs in the background of his apartment that are supposed to, I guess, show whatever, his interior struggle. I don't know if that worked for me. I didn't mind that it was there, but it didn't add to it. What did you think of the photos in the background?
Well, I mean, I didn't mind them being there or not. I mean, they are obvious in terms of, oh, this is what my character is going through, but they're interesting in terms of the style of the piece, like the idea just to do it. And I think that it shows that at a certain point, Woody Allen was trying a lot of different things that seem avant-garde for him. You know what I mean? There is a certain perception of him, and I'm only talking about the perception of him now. I'm not talking about anything else, but the public perception of him is, he writes these relationship comedy dramas, that have, fairly weak endings but fairly entertaining middles, and, he's this prolific writer. And most of his movies are sort of the same. Well, first of all, that's not the truth. Secondly, something like Stardust Memories, I think it's a shame it was so critically attacked when it came out, because had he been allowed to develop that more surreal side to his nature, or that more avant-garde side to his nature, he could have turned into a even more fascinating filmmaker than he is right now.
Yeah, I think you could look at the 3 or 4 films that followed as him maybe trying to step back and win people over again. Midsummer Night's Sex Comedy is just, it is so light and airy, it's almost as if the movie doesn't exist. And, Zelig and Broadway Danny Rose, just very different direction, just crowd pleasers compared to this, I'd say.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, Broadway Danny Rose is a biggie for him. And isn't Purple Rose of Cairo around there as well? Doesn't that crop up soon?
84, 85, right around there.
Which is obviously another big hit he has. So, yeah, I think, after that, you still get great movies. Zelig is obviously technically ambitious, which is something, again, you don't see. But he doesn't really make something this sort of odd again, I guess, until something like Shadows and Fog.
Yeah.
Everything else is sort of more or less what we've come to expect from him. Stuff like Another Woman and Crimes and Misdemeanors and Hannah and Her Sisters and things like that. It all seems to be fairly similar.
Yeah, a lot warmer.
Right, exactly. And, and I love those movies as well. But the thing that, Stardust Memories, the reason why I'm glad we're talking about it is it really does seem to stick out in his filmography far more than I ever realized because of my dim memory of it. And it, to me, I almost equate it to The Meaning of Life, the Monty Python film, in the way that Holy Grail and Life of Brian, as good as they are and as surreal as they are and whatever, they're still fairly safe in terms of this is our comedy subject, this is how we're going to attack it, and this is the comedy you saw us do in the TV show, and so on. That's great, it's wonderful, it's well done. But when you get to Meaning of Life, especially that middle section with the find the fish weirdness, with the guy who's dressed as a large green elephant and all this other stuff that's going on, it's where they've gone, look, this is probably our last movie, screw it, let's just, throw everything in with the kitchen sink and see what we can do. And really interesting stuff comes out of that. And, you kind of wish that they continued on that trajectory and did more interesting, weird, complex stuff. In the same way that when I watch Stardust Memories, I'm like, there's so much good, funny, interesting, deep, weird, human stuff going on in this movie that, you kind of wish that maybe, not every movie, but like every 3 or 4 movies, he was like, okay, with this one, I'm going to stretch myself again. And it's just interesting when you see a filmmaker try and stretch himself, you know what I mean? And that's what's most fascinating for me as a long-time Alan fan watching Stardust Memories.
Yeah, and it's funny how the critics loved Manhattan and hated this movie. And again, it really just seems because Woody is kind of poking them, so they just, I feel like a lot of critics at that point sat down and watched it and saw themselves in the depiction of the insane fans and were, insulted by it. It's a shame they couldn't kind of see beyond that and realize how interesting it is. And in Manhattan, they talk about Stardust Memories being kind of dark and misanthropic almost, and they talk about how Manhattan is sweet and wonderful, but the end of Manhattan, the main character, 42-year-old main character, chases down a 17-year-old to try to convince her to stay with him, which I always took as an indictment on the Woody Allen character in Manhattan. That, Are we supposed to feel that love has conquered all in Manhattan, or are we supposed to feel that this guy is just going back to his old ways? I thought it was a second, but not many people view it that way.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, I put in Manhattan so rarely because it's just not. It's a favorite in terms of the look of New York and the way New York is shot, but it's certainly not a favorite in terms of subject matter. And in fact, there are some sort of suspect subject matter especially when his relationship with Dory in Stardust Memories. She talks about flirting with her father when she was a young girl, and she accuses him of making eyes at her 13-year-old cousin. There's a lot of that stuff, which is, sadly, with hindsight, although I'm not one to do this because I don't judge him for whatever he did. He seems to be married perfectly happily with Sun Yi, and everything seems to have gone fine. So I'm not someone who's going to judge him. But, with that little hindsight, those conversations in Stardust Memories are both envelope pushing, but also kind of uncomfortable sometimes.
Yeah, very true, very true. Now, and one thing we're getting deep and maybe not focusing on how funny that this movie is from start to finish.
Right, I agree.
Just let me point out a few early things. I love when the cook sets the rabbit on fire,
right.
and Woody's saying, "I don't eat rodent," is great. When his entourage is in his apartment and as they're leaving, he's saying, "Has anyone heard that matter is decaying?"
Right. Because the thing with the cook thing that I love, he says, every night there's a fire. Like every night. She's just hopeless at cooking. And then, the thing with the entourage thing, they're all saying to him, you shouldn't do this. The movie should be funnier. It shouldn't have this ending. And, aren't you aware that matter is decaying? Like, aren't you aware that the universe is collapsing? We should go through the list, but then we should also mention the opening scene. But let's do that. Let's do that after the list. Carry on.
Oh, my list is long. It goes through the whole movie. But just a few more.
I like that. Keep going, dude.
A few more early things. Well, and it's also like Woody, Woody is allowing himself to just let his worst opinion of everything shine in this movie. And so all the people who work for him are idiots, like the driver. I crack up even early on when he's on the phone in the back of the car and he says to his driver, "That car is parked. You can go around there."
Right.
Just the way Woody delivers that line is hysterical. The question and answer session at the hotel is just the answers that he has to the questions when he says that I wouldn't associate myself with Narcissus, and someone says, "Well, which god would you?" and he says Zeus. is great.
What's the thing he says? Is it he said it's similar to like the metaphysics gag that he does in Annie Hall, but what's the one he says? Is it Philosophy Final?
Yeah, I forget now.
He says.
Yeah, I can't remember.
I left all. There were 10 questions. I left all the answers blank. I got 100%. That's the.
Yeah, in Annie Hall, he looked into the soul of the boy sitting next to him. Right?
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's page 1 of my notes. We can go back talk about the train now.
Yeah, I was just going to say there's this wraparound device about this movie. The only other through line that's going on is as he's being honored for all his quote-unquote early funny ones, there is a movie currently in production or edited, essentially, that ends with the first scene that we see in this film, which is Woody Allen on a train, like an old-style train, full of... grotesque is not the word, but sort of odd-looking folk. Interesting, odd-looking folk, and it's both based on, I think, a lot of Italian cinema that he likes, but also based on the. There were like Da Vinci, as well as painting like beautiful things. Da Vinci used to sketch grotesques a lot of the time, like different people, like almost cartoonish, and almost every face in all of Stardust Memories is weird or made weird by large earrings or large glasses or funny hair or a clothing choice or whatever. Like there's a lot of... And it's sort of set out of time. You see sailors wandering around in those whites, and you see guys with like slick down hair and thin moustaches sat around like they're from the Prohibition era. But then... on this train at the beginning, he is sat there and there's surrounded by grotesques. One man is crying. The guy who is the ticket collector has a fantastically stern and kind of death-like face. He looks out the window to see another train on a parallel opposite track filled with beautiful people partying and having a wonderful time. One of
Sharon Stone.
Yeah, one of whom is Sharon Stone, who kisses the window in a kind of Marilyn Monroe type way. And there is the thing. Woody's suddenly like, hang on a second, why am I not on that train? Even though I think he clearly realizes he's meant to be on the grotesque train. He wants to be on the pretty people train. So he's fighting to get out of the train, and in the meantime a suitcase breaks open and sand falls out of it, which I assume is meant to be the sands of time, because sure enough they all end up at a rubbish tip or a garbage dump. And you see the ugly people or the grotesque people or the different looking people wandering onto the garbage dump, and then Woody Allen looks into the distance and you see that the beautiful people have also ended up on the garbage dump. This idea that no matter who you are, everyone ends up on the dump of life, essentially, I guess, while the sands of time run out.
What a terrible movie that entire movie that Sandy Bates made. I can only imagine sitting through 90 minutes of it.
Right, exactly. But it is, that's he makes the end of the movie that Sandy Bates is making the beginning of Stardust Memories. And it's a nice way to kind of talk about the themes that are in Stardust Memories, without Stardust Memories having to be that heavy-handed or that metaphorical or that obvious or that weird.
Yeah, but, it's good. It's good that he can entertainingly express all of these concepts. In the actual Stardust Memories movie, he touches on probably all the same points that Sandy Bates probably wanted to touch in his movie, but Woody does it so entertainingly. It's great.
Yeah, and in fact, the only thing I would say my problem with Stardust Memories, and it's funnily enough my same problem with Deconstructing-Harry, is that I think it's one step too far, although I completely understand why he did this, to end it as if Stardust Memories has been the latest Sandy movie and have suddenly be able to see the audience of Stardust Memories get up, as well as the actors and the actresses who are in Stardust Memories, get up and start complaining about Sandy Bates as they all leave.
Yeah, I couldn't. It was so movie within a movie within a movie at that point that I'm not even sure. I don't even know what's going on at that point.
Right.
But we could have done without that. It could have just ended on the train with him kissing the French girl, and we could have just closed there. But I'll let it go.
But also that conversation with the French girl, is similar. The other one that I can't really stand the ending of is Hannah and her sisters. Woody Allen has a habit of, in his endings, hitting the nail on the head too much. At the end of Hannah and her sisters, he says, I think it's a really fascinating story. A man who was married to one sister gets divorced and then years later ends up getting married to... And it's like, you don't need to tell us what we've just watched. We've just watched it. Like, that was an interesting story. Yeah. At the end of Deconstructing-Harry, he says, it's a fascinating story about a writer who can't live in his own world, can only live through... And like, we just watched that. That was the movie. We don't need you to... And similarly with Stardust-Memories, his whole bit on the train with the French woman at the end, it's like, well, if I was making this movie, it would end with a big kiss. Go on, give me a big kiss. And it's like, it's just too much. It's like one line too much.
No, I really, it's good. And like Match Point, I feel dwells on the one side of the net or the other. That whole theme. He dwells on that one or two times too many for my taste as well.
Yeah, I loathed Match Point. It's one of the few that I really can't stand, but that's because it has Jonathan Rhys Pouty Myers in it. So, but no, keep going through your list, sir. Keep going through your list. It brings up good topics.
So, really, him getting out of his car when he gets to the festival, I'm pretty sure it's one shot that starts at his point of view for a while when we meet a number of his fans, and then it pulls back and he's in the shot. It's a very long and complicated shot. And similarly, in the hotel lobby, he's trying to make a call on the payphone, and he's surrounded by people. I think some guy wants to give him a loaf of bread or something, and everyone's trying to get him to donate money. And I can only imagine the orchestration involved and all those extras and the camera movements and everything else. It's impressive and entertaining.
Yeah, I think maybe either Gordon Willis, who was at this particular time a regular cinematographer or DP for Woody Allen. I know they discussed this a lot, this movie. I think it's mentioned in the recent documentary, but that him and Gordon Willis discussed a lot. A couple of the camera techniques are in it. And I don't know how much it was carefully planned out and skilled, these shots, or whether because Woody is happy to let people be whoever they want to be and like free and loose and whatever, and it very often enjoys mistakes in his films, even though they don't necessarily appear to be mistakes. He likes people talking over each other and shooting it fast and loose. I don't know whether something like the phone sequence, he has a bunch of people lined up off screen and just says, okay, this is your bit, this is your bit, this is your bit, this is your bit, come at me as you like, or whether he carefully plans it. I don't know. But
either way, it's impressive.
Oh yeah, it's fantastic. Oh, it really comes off. I love the guy who's trying to get him to go to Israel, the crazy old guy. He goes away and then he gets dragged away by a nurse or something, and then he comes back, which I love. There's another guy, there's the really sort of weird guy is they're meant to have grown up together. Some other sort of like an
taxi driver,
or like the taxi driver, the Italian American guy. And he meets him again later in the hotel lobby, and he's like, "Hey, how come you got all this? Like, what about me?" And Woody Allen's trying to say, "But you're a cab driver. You're doing well for yourself. You've got a job and a family and everything else.
Right.
Like, what are you complaining about? This was just luck. Like, I happened to write some jokes, and people valued that. But like, why are you complaining?" And it's just a really odd little scene that's kind of almost unnerving, because the taxi driver comes across as like, oh, we're friends from back in the day, but then almost becomes almost threatening to him. You know what I mean? Like that's a...
For sure, yeah. And I mean, it's a good window into what it's like to be a celebrity and to have people always wanting something from you. And I'm sure it's not as bad as it's portrayed in this movie, but again, I think Woody consciously decided that he's going to just show the worst of it in a comical way.
See, I would probably say, I mean, maybe not for Woody himself, but if you were Robert Downey Jr. is right now, it's probably worse than it is in this movie. And because in this movie, what it's showing is he goes up to this hotel in a resort, which I'm not sure where it's meant to be, whether it's meant to be the Jersey Shore or what it is, I don't know. But he goes to this movie screening, and he's there specifically to see fans, answer questions, show his movies and everything like that. So that's why there's this gaggle of people around. The rest of his life, that doesn't happen.
Right.
Imagine being someone like Robert Downey Jr. or some other big star, Samuel L. Jackson or something at the moment, and your whole life is like that. Like everywhere you go is like that. The grocery store is like that. The gym is like that. Whatever.
Yeah. I guess definitely one criticism of Sandy Bates is if you don't want to be hounded by fans, don't agree to go to these weekend retreats.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, which is obviously a precursor to what now is like a Comic-Con or whatever. It's that kind of similar thing, doing Q&As and things. And you're completely right. And it's interesting. Woody Allen did well, it's famous in England. I don't know whether it traveled, but there was a famous interview he did with a British interviewer called Michael Parkinson. And, and one of the things he touched on is I think it was because it was off the back of the movie Celebrity, is this whole idea of, and The Celebrity is a different movie, but the whole idea of being constantly hounded, and the idea that being famous is great. You get the best seats at ball games and best seats at restaurants, and there's lots of perks, but you also have to put up with all this. And what I like about Stardust Memories is that it's not whinging. It's not like one of those people where you hear someone who's been famous for 15 minutes because they, I don't know, did a sex tape or something, suddenly going, I don't like it because someone's outside my house with a camera. It's not one of those kind of whingy things. It's just saying that as a filmmaker, he's surrounded by all these people who are very doting and very loving and very whatever, yet they can't accept him when he just wants to do something slightly different. There seems to be more to it than just I'm surrounded by idiots, although that is also a part of it.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely an artist, from the point of view of an artist, more than a celebrity. The celebrity comes from him being an artist first, you know what I mean?
Right, exactly. But an artist who is not being allowed to express what he wants to express. And what's interesting is that Woody Allen's actual career, he just does express whatever the hell he wants to express, and has been able to since take the money and run onwards. He's had final cut on his movies. And
I think it's extraordinary that he could make this movie. I can't imagine like Paul Thomas Anderson making a movie like this, or any young current director doing something like this and doing it well. Do you?
No, I can't think of it. I think it's a. I don't know whether I forgive Woody Allen certain things or whether I just like his films, or whether I think that Woody Allen has a unique comedy to him. And I think that allows him to do certain things that in other people's hands would be far more self-indulgent and obvious. And I think that by sort of layering that humor and that self-depreciation and that anger throughout his movies, it makes him more human. And certainly to me anyway, I know that Woody Allen has massive amounts of detractors, so I'm just talking as a fan, but that I kind of, any sort of self-indulgence or stuff I welcome rather than attacking. And in terms of youngsters being able to do it today, well, I don't know a filmmaker who would be able to be that self-aware without being egomaniacal.
Yeah, the only one who's been created a persona like that would be Kevin Smith, if he were ever to. I don't think it's in his ballpark of expertise, but you know what I mean. There aren't as many, it seems, directors who act in all their work like that.
No, true. I mean, Kevin Smith is a good example because, of course, he has done a Hollywood parody in Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, and he has done a personal, intimate story, Chasing Amy. But you're right. I don't know whether he could ever do something like this. Now, I've not seen a lot of Ingmar Bergman films because, I just don't have time in my life. But have you seen any? Because he's Woody Allen's favorite filmmaker. This is apparently inspired by a lot of his stuff. So
yeah, it also, I guess it's inspired by 8.5 by Fellini, which I've seen once and it didn't do much for me. Likewise with Bergman, maybe I've seen half dozen of his movies and I don't get it.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a feeling, I think I think I'm right in saying to myself and my personal taste, the humor plays a huge part in it. I'm so attracted to Woody Allen's humor on film that really, as long as that's there, I can sit through most of his films.
Right, whereas Bergman is Woody Allen without the humor, or Interiors is very Bergman-esque in that it's very serious and boring.
Right.
He's got one movie called Scenes from a Marriage from 1972. Bergman does that. I think is real good, and it's really just about a couple. But a lot of the other stuff gets very, very deep and not for my taste.
Yeah, it's not really my thing. But I mean, if you know, and Fellini as well, of course, and Antonioni, and you know, there's a whole bunch of them. But I wouldn't necessarily go and watch all their movies just to kind of understand this one. I think you can sort of sit and watch this as a nice little curiosity in his filmmaking career, and a welcome one as far as I'm concerned. I'm trying to think of. I mean, I love that the driver gets pulled over for mail fraud and arrested.
Yeah.
Just in the middle of the movie for no reason whatsoever.
Oh, another great line is when he says that his grandmother could never consider suicide. She was always too busy running the boiled chicken through the deflavorizing machine.
Right, yeah.
Which is a deep point, which is one that if you're too busy trying to raise a family, you don't have time to think about your place in the world, but it's also hysterically funny. He's a genius.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I am right in saying, yes, she's uncredited, but Louise Lasser plays his secretary. Obviously, Louise Lasser was his girlfriend and had appeared in Bananas and a couple of his other, Everything You Want to Know About Sex or Afraid to Ask. And her character is great. Her character is like a sketch comedy character in terms of she's a secretary, but she's useless at being a secretary.
Yeah, very funny. Very funny.
You know, she has no idea. She's like, oh, it's on Wednesday, no, Friday. No, wait a minute, it's on Thursday. I have it written down somewhere.
And she's always saying, my fault.
My fault. Yeah, oh, she's a sweetheart. She's a complete sweetheart, but she's fucking hopeless at running his life. You know, and the cook is hopeless at cooking. And, you know, it's... I mean, there is a certain misogyny to Woody Allen. I mean, if we want to be hypercritical on it, there is a certain sexism to the film and the way he conducts himself in the film, similar to Deconstructing-Harry. And while there are criticisms of that, like people in Stardust-Memories are always coming up to him and saying, you know, how can you do this? Why aren't you just being with this woman? This one was a crazy person. Like, why did you even stick that one out? But what are you doing with this one? You've made her leave her husband, but now you're not going to see it through, and like, man up. And although people are always attacking him, which is kind of the counterbalance to the misogyny or the sexism, and similarly in Deconstructing-Harry, people are always like, you're a mess. You're a mess. Why did you do this? You're an asshole. Because of the humor, and there's one particular scene in Deconstructing-Harry I'll bring up later, but because of the humor, you're still with Woody Allen. So I don't know whether women are, but men, when I watch it, I'm still with it.
Yeah, and I don't think it's...
Which is a problem, but...
Yeah, I think it's just because it's from a man's point of view, you're more apt to find misogyny, but I think if a woman wrote a similar movie, it would go the opposite way, just naturally. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm trying to think of it. One of the objections I always have to simple rom-coms tends to be that even if it has a woman writer, they make the women so weak and feeble and the men so dominating and ridiculously, there's nothing real about it. I can't think necessarily of a female written movie in which, the woman is the one that comes out on top and all men are pigs. Well,
I think that
not a mainstream movie. There's some weird feminist documentaries I've seen, but not.
Also, some of it might be true. I mean, I think Woody does have his pick of lots of women, or did at that point, and was surrounded by a lot of unstable women who were in love with him, and so I think it's authentic. Whether it's not necessarily good though.
No, and I think, it's not just the humor that deflects it. I think the realism does deflect it as well. And there is a certain feeling in his movies where, you know, because everyone in his movies are always having affairs, or they have mistresses, or they have girlfriends, or, you know, or they're in a committed, happy relationship, and then they go to the corner store and bump into a like young, waifish, doe-eyed, attractive girl, and suddenly that's of. I think that, as well as the humor, the realism of it does allow it to happen. You know, there's two schools of thought to some extent. You know, and in fact, he talks about it in there. He says. Doesn't he say at one point, well, maybe marriage isn't for you then, or something like that? Isn't there that
I think
line?
that's in Deconstructing-Harry, yeah.
Oh, is it? Okay.
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, well...
it's probably in both.
Yeah, probably. Because there's two trains of thought. There is the, you know, it's best to settle down and, you know, have a committed relationship and so on, which doesn't stop any of the thoughts or opinions or scenarios playing out necessarily in your mind. Not that they do constantly, but that they might. But that you don't act on them. And then there's the other school of thought where it's like, look, human beings are messy, weird, wonderful things that have sexual desire and attraction and things they can't explain. And, you know, if that results in a broken heart or two, that's just life. And while it is sad and while it is tragic, it can't be like a lot of kind of pop music or whatever, the be-all and end-all. Like a broken heart can't be, well, that's it, my life's over, whatever. You know what I mean? You know what I'm trying to say? I'm not saying it very well, but...
Yeah. Well, he's portraying life in all of its messy expansiveness. You know, it's not just a simple, straightforward thing, and especially for his character, who's able to indulge his every whim more so than, say, the cab driver that he meets in the hotel lobby. You know, the cab driver doesn't have the. He has the luxury of not having women show up in his hotel room, you know, with brownies. With their husbands waiting outside in the van, you know, that's not an issue for the average guy.
Right.
That he has to be like, what would I do if a girl showed up in my hotel room? Well, it's never going to happen, but you know, it does happen to celebrities. So I've lost where I was going, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, I think I was just, you know, I think it comes down to your moral philosophy, and a lot of people's moral philosophy is that any kind of transgression from whatever would be the, you know, recognized conservative norm is the worst thing that could possibly ever happen. But there is another moral philosophy that says, well, no, this stuff happens. It doesn't have to be the end of the world. It can just be life, because life is messy and, you know, people have attraction and all the rest of it. And a lot of people look at that moral philosophy and go, yes, but you're just excusing these assholes, these terrible people, these whatever. And it doesn't have to be like that. You can have the second moral philosophy and still be monogamous. It doesn't have to be, well, I'm going to act on this moral philosophy. You could just accept what, you know, I come from, for example, a family of divorce. Well, when you come from a family of divorce, you can't turn around and hate, you know, your parents because they happen to have fallen in love with other people, or happen to, you know what I mean? You have to, at a certain point, reconcile that. And a lot of Woody Allen's movies are making the same kind of point, I think.
Yeah, but possibly because he recognizes his own moral failings, or at least the moral failings of the character. So I don't think he's necessarily celebrating. You know, he's not always. I don't
mean it in a celebratory way. Right, I just mean it in a realistic way. It happens. One must accept it, rather than it happens and it has to be the end of the world.
Right.
Or it happens and, you know, you have to accept it, but you don't necessarily have to condone it. It doesn't have to be condoned. It doesn't have to be agreed upon. It just is. And yeah, he's commenting on his moral failings. Of course he is. But I think also either because of his celebrity or his fame or whatever, maybe his moral philosophy is more flexible.
Yeah. He's out there testing the limits of morality for the rest of us. He reports back every year with a new movie. A few more quick comments. In one of the Q&A sessions, there's a guy, it shows the crowd, a guy asks a question about whether a scene is an homage to another movie. And as he's asking that, you can see 2 rows ahead of him, a guy turns around and kind of gives him a wink as if to say, nice question. And that feels completely real. Like that happens in Q&A sessions at Comic-Cons and other things. It was just, what a nice touch.
Yeah, but I thought he turned around and winked at the camera. Does he not turn around and wink at the camera?
Oh, I just figured he was winking at the guy asking the question as if to say, like, yeah, I wanted to ask that question too. Way to go, man.
Oh, okay, fair enough. Yeah, I had read it as some sort of weird wink to the camera, but I don't know necessarily what that was the case. I like that Tony Roberts' response is, no, we just stole it outright.
Yeah, absolutely. And then when Woody thinks he's dead in the hospital, and then the nurse is biting on an apple and say, it's a shame, poor fool, he's dead, and he never figured out the meaning of life. That's a great little moment right there.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And what I write, kind of what we were saying before, is all sense of narrative structure is thrown out the window at the very end. Gratuitous happy ending on the train, and then boom, we're in a movie theater, and it just feels like what he just said. All right, this movie's over, and let's end it weird.
Yeah, and yeah, I mean, it doesn't ruin the movie for me, but it doesn't. I think the danger is when you're telling a real life story, life continues. You know what I mean? It just goes on. It doesn't have an ending unless all of your characters suddenly die in an accident. So it does become one of these. How do we wrap this thing up when it doesn't have a through line other than here are some scenes from a life type thing? And so the wrap up is always going to be ham-fisted and convoluted, and it's just something you have to accept, I think.
Yeah, but all in all, my top Woody movies fluctuate, but it's always in the top 2 or 3. It's really good. It's shot beautifully. It conveys an incredible amount of information in a short time in an entertaining way. The acting is great. The black and white is great. So many funny lines. It's hysterically funny and weird and interesting and much better than Annie Hall. And no one ever mentions Stardust-Memories. It's not fair. We're going to change that, though. We
are going to change that. This is all about it. The 3 people who listen to the podcast who are Woody Allen fans are going to change that. Because, I don't... What's odd is we're sitting here now in 2013, and his last 2 movies, I don't know about Outside New York, but his last 2 movies, well, it's not his last 2 movies, is it? Because he had the Rome one in between. But no, the Midnight in Paris and then Blue Jasmine, which are, 2 years apart, have been huge successes, huge hits. I mean, Blue Jasmine was, until I think last week, still playing down the block from me. And Midnight in Paris was insanely popular. I mean, made millions and millions worldwide, and neither movie is any good, particularly.
Yeah, it's especially Blue Jasmine. That did very, very, very little for me. I was pretty bored throughout the whole thing. It was, I don't know, I guess the topical nature of the whole Madoff connection maybe added the interest, and then everyone's raving about the performance by Cate Blanchett. And then Midnight in Paris, at least, it's just kind of a feel-good, sort of more like a Purple Rose in Cairo type lark kind of for Woody. But it definitely didn't warrant excessive praise and money it got. But hey, good for him.
Oh, no, great. No, it's great because all it means is that he can do what he wanted to do and continue to make movies until he falls over, which is what we as fans want.
We got another 20 years at least, by the way.
Yeah, I hope so. And I think that what I'd like to see now is more of more weird shit. Now he's had the big success. He's had the big Hollywood blockbuster this late in his career. Screw it. Now go off and do weird stuff. That's what I want.
Yeah, because basically since Deconstructing-Harry and Celebrity and a little bit of Sweet and Low Down, he had, but especially those two were much darker, and he hasn't gone there since then. He's more than due.
Yeah, he hasn't done really a weird one. Scoop has some weirdness to it, but not a huge amount. That's still a fairly... I love Scoop. I think it's the best of his British movies, which I'm alone in thinking, but I couldn't stand Match Point or Cassandra's Dream, so...
I like all three. Cassandra's Dream, nobody paid any attention to that one. It's crazy. You Will Meet a Tall Dark Stranger, I thought was horrible. I couldn't...
Yeah, You Will Meet the Tall Dark Stranger is possibly the worst movie he's ever made. I couldn't even get through 10 minutes of it. Cassandra's Dream I liked more than Match Point. I did like Cassandra's Dream more than Match Point. And again, nobody paid any attention to Cassandra's Dream. But it was a perfectly good movie. And everyone raves about Vicky Cristina Barcelona, and I'm sorry, I couldn't give a toss.
I didn't mind it. I didn't like that it had a narrator. It just seemed superfluous for there to be a narrator. But it was okay.
See, I liked Melinda and Melinda. I thought.
I liked it too. I thought Will Ferrell was hysterical in that movie when he sees his wife is cheating on him and he's happy about it. It's a great moment.
I would actually say that To Rome with Love, and I don't know if you saw it, but To Rome with Love had what Stardust-Memories had, in the sense of it being almost a sketch film. It's an ideas sketch film.
Yeah, it seems every once in a while Woody will go to the drawer and find 5 or 6 concepts and just throw them together. And Stardust and Deconstructing-Harry both have that feel where you see the clips from the movies that Sandy Bates made. Those are funny little skits from the movies within the movies, and it seems that he probably had all those ideas in the last decade and just decided to use them there. And the escaped conscience part.
We didn't mention that, of course. Okay. Two things we have to mention because you reminded me now. First of all, Woody Allen does a monster movie that I loved, like the idea of his his anger has escaped, or
it's something like that. Yeah.
And I love the callback to it later in the field when someone says something really innocuous and the anger grabs him and yanks him off screen.
That is wonderful. Really, really good. Really
that is
fun.
Such a tiny little callback, but it made me howl with laughter. Loved that. Also, Stardust Memories contains what may be Woody Allen's funniest bit ever, I think, post Love and Death. And that is... there is a sci-fi movie that he is making or has made, or a sketch comedy or something that he's doing with Tony Roberts, where he has a really attractive woman and a really ugly woman, and he's saying, I love this ugly woman for her mind, but I couldn't find her sexually attractive, and I love this woman for her sexual attraction, but her mind was really aggressive and mean. So I'm going to transport her mind into her body and her body into her mind, and then I'll have the perfect woman. What happened? I fell in love with the ugly, mean one. I love that. Like,
it's wonderful. Just good. It definitely all those clips are callback to his old, the Sleeper and Banana style, just comedy, just plain old comedy, and it's great.
Yeah, and if you look at something like To Rome with Love, although I don't think it's one of his best, I liked the guy who can only sing if he's in the shower while on stage, and I liked the Roberto Benigni 15 Minutes of Fame comment. I kind of liked those two little skits.
Yeah, definitely. It was, that movie was just all over the place, but especially the guy singing in the shower, that was genuinely funny. And Woody was as he's in those, which is great, and he's as good as ever in those scenes. Yeah,
my problem was the whole Alec Baldwin as a young man lesbian thing. That I didn't care about any of that.
I did not care at all, and I was just confused by the time aspect of that. That movie was just really thrown together haphazardly, I think.
But I don't mind that as long as something interesting comes out. That's my feeling.
Right, and that didn't happen too much for that To Rome with Love. But hey,
yes,
Woody can. I wish I could watch a Woody Allen movie without knowing it's a Woody Allen movie, because I'm always concerned that my preconceived notions change my opinion.
Well, also, he has such a distinctive comedic voice. His whole wisecrackery and his concepts and his the way he does things. It's to me and to you, I think, anyone into comedy, it's like a drug, and you just want more, and you want, come on, be clever for me, be funny and clever for me, please, keep doing it. And he's been doing it for 40 years. I don't quite know what more we can expect from him.
Yeah, and it's sometimes I feel I'm too hard on him, and sometimes I feel I'm too easy on him. So,
right.
There's plenty of times I go back to a movie and I say, like Small Time Crooks, I hated the first time, and then the second or third time I was like, well, it's just a silly comedy. It's got some funny moments. I was, because that one came on the heels of Sweet and Lowdown and Celebrity and Deconstructing-Harry, so it was definitely a step in a very different direction, and it took me a while to – not that it's great, but it wasn't as terrible as I first thought.
And weirdly, I think, he has a great run in the 60s leading up to Stardust-Memories, which is great, although obviously it does have interiors in it. For me, his most consistent period, the bit that I really love, is from Shadows and Fog right through to almost Curse of the Jade Scorpion, because I didn't really mind that either.
Yeah, that one has so many funny lines in it. It's really, really good.
Because you have Shadows and Fog, Husbands and Wives, Manhattan Murder Mystery, Bullets Over Broadway, Mighty Aphrodite, Everyone Says I Love You, Deconstructing-Harry, Celebrity, Sweet and Lowdown, Small Time Crooks, and Curse of the Jade Scorpion. I love all those movies.
That's incredible. That is an incredible run that gets so little attention just because of everything else he does. But that stretch, I think, Husbands and Wives is remarkable. It's gripping. It's so intense. It's fantastic. And Manhattan Murder Mystery is incredibly funny.
Yeah, Manhattan Murder Mystery is up there with Annie Hall, Manhattan. Like, for people who like that period of his thing, it's up there, if not better than any of those movies.
Yeah, Alan Alda is really good. I'm really
it's my wife's favorite Woody Allen movie.
When they're trying to play the tape of that they recorded the girls saying the words and they're getting it all wrong.
Yeah,
that is just laugh out loud funny.
We interrupt this podcast to tell you about other podcasts that may or may not be broadcasting in your neighborhood right now.
The Three Black Geeks Podcast. Listen to us on iTunes, Libsyn, and Podomatic. Somehow we're still over there and just listen. It's good. It's good. Anyway, DJ Sue, what do you say we want to be out?
I say look for us on Facebook, on Twitter. No, we do not have a MySpace. And no, we do not have Google AdSense. But we do have Podomatic, as Dee just said.
And we're broke as hell. We need money. This ain't good. Play the knife one day. We need money.
You ever sit listening to this thinking, good God, what am I doing with my life? Or wondering maybe where the show came from or why it's here? Well, you've only got one show to blame. That's Profondo Cinema. That's right. The show Profondo Cinema over at profondo-cinema.blogspot.com. That's profondo-cinema.blogspot.com. If it wasn't for them, I personally wouldn't be doing this show. They are absolutely fantastic. Every week, or indeed just whenever they get together, Axel and Jay Scott discuss fantastic films from all different realms of cinema. The latest episode was a Paul Newman episode, for example, but in the past they have done horror, grindhouse, exploitation, cult, action, all sorts of stuff. It's absolutely a great show. They've got a fantastic rapport, and I can't listen to them enough or urge you all to listen to them enough. So go over there, listen to Axel and Jay Scott over on Profondo Cinema at profondo-cinema.blogspot.com.
Howdy, folks. Like blood, violence, freaks and
You come to the right place. My name is Gary, and I'm your guide to Cinema Beef Podcast. Every episode, we not only deliver film reviews, we also dismantle some of your favorite and most hated films, sometimes for the better and sometimes for the worse.
Hey, you shut your face! If we want to hear you talk, I will shove my arm up your ass and work your mouth like a puppet.
All right, calm down. Every show I hope to have a new co-host, podcasters and listeners alike. That's right, I'm talking to you people. I take all comers.
You're sluts.
That's not very nice. The only rules, well, let's ask the best cooler in the business.
All you have to do is follow 3 simple rules. 1, never underestimate your opponent. Expect the unexpected. 2, take it outside. Never start anything inside the bar unless it's absolutely necessary. And 3, be nice.
So join the insanity and please vent your frustrations. I'm available on TalkShoe, iTunes, and Stitcher Smart Radio. And remember, here at the Cinema Beef Podcast, if you got beef, I've got the grinder.
A can't urge you enough to listen to the Schlock Treatment Podcast with
Mark McDonald, Doug Fry, Matt Ringler,
and
Kirk Howley.
They are a schlock and B-movie podcast who review films currently available to view on Netflix so that you never need to feel left out. It's a fantastically funny show done by a great bunch of guys, most of whom currently have beards. If that doesn't sell it to you, then nothing will, and you're cold dead inside. So, every Saturday, check out Schlock Treatment on iTunes or schlocktreatment.com.
Hey guys, what's up? Matt Ringler from the Schlock Treatment Podcast. We make good stuff out of bad movies, just for you.
But off the back of this 90s run that he has, this interesting 90s run, was a movie that I don't know because I wasn't living in the States and I wasn't going to the theater as much to see movies like this, but was a movie called Deconstructing-Harry, which came out in 1997, which I discovered on video with my friend John when we were in our sort of getting to know Woody Allen phase. It was one of those movies that was just out, and we loved then, love now, is one of those movies that doesn't get enough attention.
Harry Block has written a bestseller.
You told our whole story
about his best friends. He revealed their deepest secrets.
You turned into this double-talking, wise-cracking, tap-dancing liar.
And they're not pleased.
It's all here. You take everyone's suffering and turn it into gold. Literary gold.
Lucy, what's wrong with you? If you want to shoot me, shoot me.
Now Harry Block is going to hell.
Floor 6. Right-wing extremists, serial killers, lawyers who appear on television.
What did you do?
I invented aluminum siding.
You looking for someone?
This guy's the devil.
I've been offered a lot of jobs in your world.
What kind of jobs they offer you?
For 2 years I ran a Hollywood studio, but you can't trust those people.
Billy Crystal.
You want me to turn on the air conditioner?
Your air conditioned here?
Sure, it messes up the ozone layer.
Kirstie Alley.
I'm not overreacting. You were a mental case.
Judy Davis. Woody Allen.
You're under arrest without a warrant. What's on you, Mr. Block?
Demi Moore.
I'm sick of your smug cynicism.
Elizabeth Shue. Julia Louis-Dreyfus. And Robin Williams.
The actor's out of focus. You're soft. I'm getting a little late. I gotta get to the doctor.
Deconstructing-Harry.
Floor 7. The media. Sorry, that floor is all filled up. Lowest level, everybody off.
What was it like? Do you remember it coming out? Was it a hit? Was it a miss?
It was the first Woody Allen movie I saw in the theaters. I went by myself because none of my friends like Woody, and it was only playing at like an art house about 45 minutes away from where I lived. Very exciting, and I don't know. I don't think it was a hit. I mean, I was in college at the time, so it definitely wasn't a hit among my peer group. And generally, I thought a lot of people enjoy it. Everybody says "I love you." That one seemed to get a lot more attention than this one. One thing that I noticed was the audience in the theater was confused by the jump cuts, and a lot of people thought there was a problem with the projection booth.
Right. This one grossed more than everyone says. I mean, just going purely on gross, it grossed more than everyone says I love you by almost $1 million. But
the fact that was a musical, I think, it just got it a lot more attention than this movie did. And this movie is so misanthropic, it turned a lot of people off, I think.
I mean, I can tell you that it's in his top 20 moneymakers of all time, according to Box Office Mojo. It's number 17.
Interesting.
So now, obviously, that includes stuff like Ants, which is not a movie he made, but made $155 million. And it also includes like Annie Hall and Manhattan, which have obviously had years and years and years to make lots of money. But yes, what was so you first saw it in the theater, and what was your first feeling on it?
I loved it from the beginning to the end. I saw it a couple times in the theaters, and it's incredibly similar to Stardust-Memories in ways that I didn't really know until I started taking notes for this episode. But it's dark and a lot, so much more bad language than any other Woody Allen movie, and incredibly funny though. Just like the other movie, he gets a lot of points across, but he does not forget to be funny. It's probably the funniest movie of that. It's up there with Manhattan Murder Mystery from that stretch you just said in the 90s for funniest.
Yeah, it's, now the basic plot is it's a guy called, writer called Harry Block, who's a novelist. And he is in the middle of a writer's block, doesn't know what he's going to write about. And while he's in the middle of this writer's block, he is hounded by people shouting at him about his latest novel, which has very thinly disguised real events in his life to not any great success. And he has upset everyone. And this is an ongoing trait with his career in the movie, right back to like short stories that he wrote about old Jewish couple that his sister has interpreted to be about his dad. And, all his girlfriends and wives and various other people are sort of loathing him at this particular point in his life because they're sick and tired of having their dirty laundry, turned into novels by this guy. Which, comments again on the whole idea of, well, is that Woody Allen really the Woody Allen from the movies, or is he not the Woody Allen from the movies? Is he thinly disguising his real experience in these movies, or is it all fiction, like he claims it to be all fiction? And his mum, actually, when interviewed in Wild Man Blues, his mum said, no, I don't see any of Woody in the movies at all, really. And so that's basically the through line. In the meantime, you see clips from the book played out by other actors and actresses playing the parts. And he is also going to be honored by his old university, Adair, and is having problems with custody with his wife. And he has a friend who dies in the back of his car. What else? What else is going on in the story?
Yeah, well, just like Stardust, it takes place over the course of just a couple of days, and he's being honored. Very similar right there. But there's with all the flashbacks, it's so well written, the way that he's able to weave the flashbacks from his life with the reenactments from his book with the present time, and he does it in such a way that it's not confusing. You can watch it the first time and you know what's happening, and that's quite a feat right there, I think.
Yeah, and nothing about it should make sense, because like you say, it has this jump cut nature of editing, which is not something I've seen in any other movie, but it's almost like he wrote a 3-hour, very wordy movie, made it, and then went, oh, that's superfluous, that's superfluous, that's superfluous. You know exactly what he's saying, and the words come in your head, even though there's been a cut and it's already moved on to the next point. It's a very intriguing technique.
Yeah, it works. It absolutely works, and it's a little bit jarring, but in a good way. It fits with the whole tone of the movie.
And am I right in saying that as the movie goes along, the editing becomes less frantic?
Yes.
I got the feeling that the jump cuts become less as the movie, or you just become more used to them. I don't know.
No, they definitely become less. I think.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
Because my vibe is that by the time you get to Adair and that whole sequence, although there are still flashbacks and clips from his books and things.
Yeah, there's no jump cutting anywhere going on there.
Right,
yeah.
Whereas the opening scene, there's repeats, there's loops, there's jump cuts, there's all sorts of craziness going on.
So maybe the character by the end of the movie is a little bit more grounded, and his writer's block is going away, and therefore the jagged nature of things is smoothed out. Is that what he's trying? Is that the reasoning behind that, do you think?
Yeah, I think so. And also because whereas nowadays, in order to make a scene kinetic and exciting, people have decided the way to do that is to shake the camera about the place like an epileptic. In this movie, the opening scene, which is by far the most violent and jarring, with Judy Davis and Woody Allen, where she comes round to shoot him because her husband has left her because he's revealed the details of their affair in a book. That is, that's in order to create a kinetic, excitable, crazy, fractured scene, that is edited all to hell, really.
Yeah, that scene is intense and very funny. There's some good lines where she says Jane, or as you pathetically disguise her, Janet, is a great moment. And then at one point, Woody addresses the Judy Davis character as Leslie, which was the character in the book, and she's like, no, I'm Lucy. Leslie's the character.
Yeah.
It's very clever and funny and intense, and what a way to, great way to start a movie.
Well, actually, the interesting trivia for people who may or may not give a shit about my life, I did a showcase, an acting showcase in London when we were there at the now closed down Covent Garden Theatre Museum audition rehearsal space. And one of the scenes that my good friend John Wallace, who has been on the podcast, and his now wife enacted as part of that actor showcase was the opening scene of Deconstructing Harry.
Yeah, that's cool. That's a great choice. Yeah,
they did it as a self-contained sketch, which does work. Actually, it does really work.
So the movie just keeps on going, where we see Harry in his day-to-day life, and then we're able to, it kind of springboards from what is happening in his life to memories or stories that he's written in the past, and the generals where. The thesis of this movie is, should a person use their personal life as inspiration for fiction, I guess. That's the main issue. Versus how is the main issue of Stardust-Memories, I guess, is what? Should an artist be able to indulge his every whim? Is that
Yeah, I mean, yes. Put simply, they're the two themes from the movie. But the similarities between the two films are obviously in both movies he plays a creative person of some kind. In both movies, he is hounded for what he has created, either positively or negatively.
Yeah.
Both movies contain clips from his past, scenes from his movie/book. Both movies are stylistic, although differently stylistic. Both movies are stylistic. Both movies have a mix of comedy and tragedy or drama, which he has a lifelong fascination with, as he explored in Melinda and Melinda. Both movies feature slightly surreal scenes. Both movies have obviously discussions on multiple girlfriends and or wives and or adultery.
And unstable women.
That's another theme that runs through it. And like I say, both protagonists, Harry Block and Sandy
Bates
in Stardust-Memories, are, if looked at by some conservative moral structure, arseholes, like real arseholes.
I'd say Harry even more so than Sandy, also, I think.
Right.
Or you could say that Harry is a logical progression from 1980 to 1997. If it were the same character, Sandy Bates might be where Harry is at that point.
Right, older, cantankerous, more abusive.
And having hurt that many more people, having that many more people that he's hurt who want to get back at him.
Well, the one scene I wanted to bring up, I said earlier that I wanted to bring up one scene, and I found myself watching it last night and getting slightly uncomfortable, but also laughing my head off. There is a scene where his ex-wife, who is played in reality, the reality in the movie by Kirstie Alley, and in the fake movie Demi Moore.
Right.
Because this is the other thing we haven't said about this. This has an incredibly starry cast, right down to bit players, like literal no-word bit players. Jennifer Garner, Ben Affleck's now wife, is the woman in the elevator who plays the Elizabeth Shue role in his fantasy.
She's in there for like half a second.
And she's in there at the end when you see all his characters from all the books. She's in there. And
Paul
Giamatti is one of the guys at Adair who has some lines but no official lines. He's doing the whole Woody Allen improv over each other bit where he's saying, welcome to our university. And there's some other people. But so, yes, Kirstie Alley finds out that Woody Allen's character, Harry Block, has slept with one of her patients. She's a psychotherapist. And two things are going on in the scene. She is obviously devastated, upset, and is attacking him and screaming at him and upset and whatever, which, you know, and not necessarily overboard, but one could watch it and believe it to be a little melodramatic, but still justified because he has done a heinous thing, which is always funny because I've always said that therapists are probably nuttier than the people they're treating.
Yes,
and then,
I agree.
So there's an aspect of that going on, but also, you know, and he comments on it later on in the movie. He says, instead of owning up to it and being a man, you just tap danced around it. But the tap dancing is so funny. It's so
entertaining.
Hilarious.
Oh my God.
That you, in this time of desperation for this poor woman who is living with this utter bastard, you're signing with the utter bastard. Because, and there's one bit where she says, I thought that I could, I thought that I could help because I was a therapist. And he says, now, don't be down on yourself as a therapist. Which is such an asshole line, but so funny.
Yeah, or when she says, of all people, why would you cheat with one of my patients? And he says, well, we never go out. We never see any other people. And she says, you blame me that we don't go out enough so that you can find other women to have affairs with? Which, it's so good. I mean, and he is nasty and mean and tap dancing in the most entertaining way. When he says, do you think that getting pleasured by a big bosom 26-year-old is a pleasurable thing for me?
Yeah, right.
It's unbelievable. And then when he says, I swear to God I didn't cheat, and she says, but you're an atheist, and he says, we're alone in the universe. Are you going to blame me for that too?
Right. Which, again, isn't there a comment, I don't know if this is in Harry or in Stardust, because the two are now blending together in terms of funny lines, but I think it's in Stardust-Memories. Someone says, we don't need... Oh, that's it. She says, we don't need an atheist making an Easter picture. And he says, to you, I'm an atheist. To God, I'm the loyal opposition.
Loyal opposition. Yeah. That's in Stardust.
Stardust, yeah. No, I remember that. Yeah.
Right.
But no, so you feel slightly uncomfortable, you know, but at the same time, you're like, this is just too funny. So, you know, and here's I remember being 17, 18, and maybe you think more this way when you're 17, 18, or maybe some people who are hypersexual think this way their whole lives. But that scene in the therapist, his shrink's office, where he's saying, I'm always thinking of having sex with every woman that I meet, and I see someone on the street, and I was like, what would it be like to have sex with her, and stuff like that. Yeah. You know, when I was 17, 18 watching this, I was like, yeah, I completely... Like, this movie speaks to me.
Right on, Woody. Yeah. And right there is another great line where he's like, does the president of the United States want to have sex with every woman? But bad example.
Bad example, right. Yeah.
Yeah, and then he's like, what about Raoul Wallenberg? Which just, that makes, does he want to be with every cocktail waitress in Europe? That's, I don't think I even knew who Raoul Wallenberg was at that point, but I was just, when Woody makes a reference to something, you just know it's funny. Then you look it up and it's funnier, you know?
Right. It's like when he says, my ex-wife had a glimpse in the certain type of light, she looked like Max Schmeling. I had no idea who Max Schmeling was when I watched the movie, but...
I had to look. He was a boxer in the 1930s,
He was, yeah. He also mentions him in... the one with Helena Bonham Carter. What movie was that? The adopting the baby one, Mighty Aphrodite.
Yeah,
he wants to name him the baby Max after Max Schmeling.
Another great point in that when he's with the Shrek is when he talks about how he prefers prostitutes because you don't have to discuss Proust with them. Which, just so, I mean, what a ridiculous, concept that you would have to talk about literature with her,
I think the few sort of, it could almost be called self-destructive Harry, you know what I mean? Like that could even be a title. And I think the few self-destructive periods that I think guys tend to have, in their 20s or whatever, I think the one thing that this movie almost paints, I know this sounds weird, but it almost paints Harry's life as this sort of like blessed thing. And if it wasn't for these couple of crazy women in his past, like it would more or less be okay, except that it doesn't, it's odd. It portrays his life as an absolute nightmare, but you never feel sad about it. It's so funny that you sit there and you're like, oh, I wish I was on this roller coaster. Now, in reality, you don't want to be on that roller coaster at all. But do you know what I'm trying to say?
Of course, because it's shot beautifully in these great New York apartments that look so sophisticated and cool, and it's all the best-looking movie stars, who are all willing to be in his movies. So it does glamorize it for sure. And
no, just because the couple of times that you have bad times in life or whatever, it doesn't portray the loneliness. It doesn't talk about what the addiction of alcohol and pills is doing to him. It doesn't. It's not realistic in that regard. It's talking about real things, and it's like a lot of his films. It's humorous, it's funny, but if you poke around in there's some real depth, and it's saying something. It's just not saying anything in a realistic way.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's definitely more appealing in the movie than that life would be.
In the same way that beat novels are. If you think about like any of the beatnik novels, any like the Bukowski or the Kerouac or anything like that, when you read them, you're like, oh yeah, wouldn't it be great to like wake up in the morning and drink a bottle of whiskey and go out and like see the world and interact and have sex and do all this wonderful stuff. In reality, you would smell like a drain and you would have the worst depression, and it would really be a terrible, terrible life. But there's something to do with that tortured artist thing that is appealing.
Yeah. And Woody always, the thing about, I say, why isn't my life like Woody Allen's? And he always has the brilliant lines to say at the right moment, but he wrote it by himself ahead of time. So
right, exactly. Yeah. His life is not like his life in the movies. You know what
he's
I mean?
a lot more drab and dull in reality than he is in these movies.
When he went through a court case for his children, that was devastating for him. It wasn't funny and filled with like repartee.
Yeah. But the thing is, like, he's so good at making these movies that you think they're real. Like you fall for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he the reason why people get confused and think they're real is that, or based on reality, is that he has created not only a persona, which initially he claimed was based on Bob Hope, but I think has far evolved that, has far evolved from that love and death, everything's a joke type persona to be something deeper and richer. But, not only has he developed a persona, but he's developed a world. And yes, it does resemble our world, and there's stuff that happens in it is stuff that happens in our world, but it's a fantasy in the same way that 99% of romantic comedies, even if someone doesn't fly or turn green or a monster doesn't attack the city or whatever, they're still fantasies. Life doesn't play out that way.
Yeah. Woody's just better at tricking you into thinking it's not a fantasy.
Well, he's more sophisticated. Yeah. He adds tones of light and dark. The characters are three-dimensional. They're not these thinly drawn, wispy nobodies. In these particular movies, he has done movies where the characters are a bit thin, but not in these films.
Yeah. So another nice touch in the movie is that near the end you see the story of Woody going to hell to confront the devil. Later on with Billy Crystal, but around the midway point in the movie, you can see where he gets the idea for that, and he's at the typewriter starting to type it, and you see just 3 or 4 seconds of the opening scene of that story, and then he's distracted. And I thought that was a really nice touch. That's all I had to say about it, though.
Yeah, no. In terms of editing and calling back, it's like the monster in the scene from the movie that comes back at the end. Yeah, I like it. And also, I don't know, but that's possibly his most I know it's not ambitious because it's just on a soundstage and someone's built it and whatever, but it feels like one of the most ambitious scenes Woody's ever done because it's this big, grand presentation of hell.
Yeah, I'd Shadows and Fog is the only thing that would compare, I would think, in terms of such a surrealistic kind of thing.
Yeah, because that was filmed entirely on a set, but it's just it's an incredible scene, and all of a sudden you get all these like greased up, topless, like Playboy bunny type girls all in chains and things. It suddenly becomes this very kind of misogynistic and dark expression of hell.
Yeah. Woody definitely wanted to push limits a little bit with this movie for sure.
And do you think it's like the movie itself is talking about how people have reacted to his movies? Because really all the girlfriends and wives in the thing that are attacking him, that's the critics, really. That's the, in reality, who are attacking him. And, do you think that Woody Allen makes that point in a movie in which it is so unlike any film that he's done, from the editing, from the nudity, from the foul language? I mean, there isn't one rude word that anyone can possibly think up that isn't in this movie, right up to the, what people consider the worst possible word. Mm-hmm. And so that's for me, the intelligence of it is the idea. It's like, okay, I'm going to attack the critics about the fact that they think it's my real life, while showing them another possibility of what my real life might be, to confound them. This idea that really in real life I could be this writer who loves baseball, who drinks whiskey, who takes pills, who, has sex with hookers, who, why couldn't that be my reality?
Yeah, he's toying with people, sort of, throughout the whole movie, toying with the audience.
Right, in the same way that he does in Stardust Memories, only with a different result. And I like that. I like the cheeky little demon inside Alan coming out occasionally and being like, okay, have at this then. Pick this one apart, you bastards.
I would love it if he did that again. It's time for him to check in with that part of his persona. I would love it.
Yeah, I remember watching it the first couple of times and going, oh, Woody Allen saying that word. Oh, that doesn't fit right. But actually, once you grow up and accept it, it's fine. I don't find it a problem anymore.
Classic Woody thing that I've noticed in almost every Woody movie is a character will comment on the redness or the whiteness of another character's face. Now that I've mentioned this to you, keep that in mind next time you're watching a Woody movie. It happens when Judy Davis is being told by her sister that that Woody's leaving her, and then she thinks he's leaving her for her. And the sister says, "Look, you're all red. Oh, now you're all white." Happens all the time in Woody movies. Keep that in mind.
Okay, I will. I'll check it out. Also, keep a lookout for Irving Metzman, who is both in, this was another pleasurable surprise for me watching these movies again. He is in Stardust Memories as, I believe, Woody Allen's attorney in that movie. He also plays in Deconstructing-Harry, the shoe salesman that tells Tobey Maguire.
Tobey Maguire, yeah.
Who tells Tobey Maguire all about the Asian prostitute.
Yes.
It's also a world in which prostitutes are either Asian or black, which is kind of unfortunate as well.
And people complimented Woody on finally diversifying, having more diverse cast, but it was only as prostitutes, so it's not that impressive.
No, in fact, his first artistic speaking male African American character was in Melinda and Melinda.
Yeah, but I don't know. I mean, maybe Woody's world doesn't involve a lot. If he's writing about his own experiences, I think he doesn't spend much time with people, non-white people. You know what I mean? Not that he chooses not to, you know what I mean?
Well, he can't be racist. He married an Asian woman, so it's not it's not like he's saying, well, of course, all Asian people are whores. He's not saying that. He's just it comes from that old. Because what does he say? He says Irving Metzman, the guy who plays the shoe salesman, says that old phrase, "trained in the art of pleasing men" or whatever, from which was. I forget where that comes from, but it's an old phrase. I've heard it in vaudeville acts and things from way, way back.
It's a cliche.
Yeah, and I think to do with Asian women, I think.
Yeah, well, geisha kind of
geisha girls kind of thing. Yeah. So I mean, I don't know whether that's why she's Asian or not. I mean, I don't care. I don't think people are. I don't think Woody Allen is a white supremacist. I'm not saying that at all. But but especially as the fact that actually, as he's going down, one of the best scenes is going down in the elevator to hell. All the different people on all the different floors that he would put in hell, and one of them is right-wing fundamentalists. So
Yeah. It's almost too easy for him for that health thing where he puts the media on one floor, after his dealings with all the Sunni tabloid stuff.
Right.
It's almost too easy.
But then he says, "I'm sorry, that floor is full." Yeah. Billy Crystal, amazing in this movie as the devil. I love him.
Yeah, he was great. Yeah, he did a great job. And the one story that I could have done without was the story of the old Jewish woman whose husband killed his previous family. I feel like it didn't really push the story, the movie too far in any direction. And it wasn't. It had a few funny moments, like when the husband says, "Can you pass the peas?" and she pushes it rudely in his direction. I think that could have been cut from the movie and made it 3 minutes shorter and a little bit better. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, you've already made the point that people in his life are angry at him because of what he's written. This adds his family to that list. I don't know what more that tells us.
Yeah, like we get the point of the sister even could have said, "Look how you portray Jewish women," and we didn't have to necessarily then see it. But that's a minor quibble. And then another thing, in Stardust, he visits his sister as well, and Woody does have a sister in real life.
Except his sister produces or helps to produce all his films.
Right, they're closer than they are in these movies. The visiting of the sister in Stardust is so much fun. Is one thing we forgot to mention. A really funny scene when he comes in and it's all the women, and there's a woman who'd been attacked recently, and
that's a disturbing scene. I always find that absolutely. They're all doing yoga or something. There's like an Indian faith healer or Swami or something, like a guy who's leading the thing, and he shows up later again. They go into the apartment. There's all these, again, grotesques. They're all sort of weird-looking women. His sister has enormous rimmed glasses, looks like Elton John. And this woman comes in covered in bruises, talking about how she was, raped, essentially, right? Abused by a whole gang of men over and over again. And Woody makes like this flippant gag about it.
She says, "I didn't even resist," and he says, "Yeah, well, you wouldn't, you know."
I don't even know how you put that in a movie. It's so dark. I mean, that's one of the darkest things he's ever done.
Yeah, that whole sequence in Stardust-Memories is very dark, but so funny. The husband on the bike.
He's amazing.
Ringing the bell over and over again, and he says, "I have 2 heart attacks before I get my bike." And what he says, and since then, 2 more heart attacks. And he's smoking a cigarette on the exercise bike. Oh, it is.
Well, what's incredible about the cigarette thing is later him and Woody and the sister go into the bedroom, and the guy's still going back and forth on the bike, and he starts to ring the bell, and she's like, "God, ever since Christmas I got him this bell." So they leave the bedroom, and as they leave the bedroom, you just see his hand from off frame reach forward, grab the cigarettes, and go.
Yeah, it's a very, very subtle and nice little sight gag. So those scenes we didn't talk about for Stardust, but he visits his sister again in Harry, and it's not as entertaining. And dropping that story of the old Jewish couple kind of makes it drag a little bit. I didn't mind them visiting the sister. That could have been a little bit shorter. I think at that point in Deconstructing Harry, we needed it a little bit more momentum towards the ending.
Yeah, definitely. And who is that? I kind of recognized him. Who is it, the guy who plays the ultra-Jewish husband that his sister is married?
Eric Bogosian. He's from Talk Radio, right? With Oliver Stone, the movie from '88.
Yeah, it is him. Okay, I wondered if it was. Yeah.
But it does have a good line where he says, "You think I'm Jewish, paranoid?" And what he says, "I think you're the opposite of paranoid. You go around with the insane delusion that people like you." So that's
good. Yeah, I mean, it's. Yeah, I guess they're both movies we've picked. They're definitely movies for the artistically inclined, whatever that means, the troubled, the fucked up, and they're definitely movies for men, I think. Although Dory likes Deconstructing Harry. I mean, it just depends whether you care about that stuff or whether you're not. If you're politically correct inclined, then you won't like these movies.
Yeah, and that doesn't bother me. So.
No, I couldn't care less at all. In fact, the less politically correct, the better.
Yeah, another nice touch is when he talks about Billy Crystal being the devil, and I always smell burning sulfur. And then we flash back to when they first met, where Faye and Billy Crystal meet for the first time. They're buying a chemistry set, and then the scene ends with Woody saying, "Dude, I smell sulfur," and he thinks his son opened the chemistry kit. It's very tight. The script, other than the old Jewish couple scene that kind of warned me, it's 96 minutes. It's real tight. So much information in such a short, concise time. Very impressive.
But I think that he likes the idea of an old Jewish guy saying, "What are you having to go at me for? Some burn, some berry, I ate." I think he likes that.
It's funny for sure. But I would have cut it for the sake of the whole movie. Sometimes, but
I agree. But I think the performances of the three old Jewish characters, the two women and the guy, I adore the performances, but I completely and utterly agree and take your point. It doesn't give us any further information.
Yeah. I mean, minor quibble for a fantastic movie. One of the best movies of the decade, really.
Yeah, and what does he say? There's a great line. I mean, it's a chance for him to comment on religion, and there's a great line in there about religion, and I can't remember what it is.
When his sister says, for you, it's just, she lists four words, and then he says, "I could run for office in France and win on that slogan."
Oh, yeah. He says, that's great. But isn't there one where he says something about taking science over the Pope or something?
Oh, yeah. Air conditioning or the Pope, I'll take air conditioning.
Yeah. Is that in Deconstructing Harry?
Yes, it is. Yeah. Another fun moment is when he gets bailed. Again, he goes to jail, just like in Stardust-Memories.
Yes. That's another similarity, yeah.
Elizabeth Shue gives him a baseball signed by his favorite team, which the Dory character, I think, does the same thing. Doesn't she give him a signed baseball on the beach or in Stardust-Memories?
She gives him... gives him a book. She gives him a... it's not
Maybe
a baseball. It's not a baseball, but it's a...
But just the tone of that whole, whole tone of that is so similar.
The troubled girl gives him a gift, yes.
He probably has a template. He's like, all right, now I got to do the troubled girl gives gift scene. Minor variation on that.
Yeah.
But when they're in the police station talking about... you slept with somebody, and she's like, I slept with my gynecologist, and it's like, I don't see what that has to do with anything.
Billy Crystal looks shocked in that point. We should also point out that the same person plays his mother and his younger self in Stardust as plays them in Annie Hall.
Okay, wait, start that again?
Right, in Annie Hall, there's clips back to him being in Brooklyn, and there's a young ginger kid plays him, and a kind of narrow-faced older woman plays his mother. That pairing is the same in Stardust.
When he's doing his magician work and whatnot, yeah.
Right, except by the time you get to Radio Days, it's then changed. But it's become Seth Green in Radio Days. But apart from that little boy who plays him in both movies.
Yeah, that's a funny scene too. So overall, I love the look of Deconstructing Harry. It makes living in New York seem very cool and glamorous, and it's. It
is. No.
Okay. The whole myth of being an artistic person in New York, just like the myth of the beat writers. I mean, he's totally making it look exact. Everything that you want it to be, but it probably isn't quite that. I'm sure it's not even nearly that great. But this is a movie, and he sells it wonderfully. So it looks good. The editing is very interesting and effective. The script is incredibly tight. Like I said, I'd say it's his best movie from the 90s, and in his top 5. I'll take Stardust over Deconstructing. Where do you stand?
Yeah, I would have said I'd take Deconstructing over Stardust, but watching Stardust again last night, the first 15 minutes for me for Stardust is a bit slow going, but once Stardust hits its stride and you kind of get into it, I really, really love it. I'd be hard pressed to put one over the other. I don't really know whether I could do that. I like them both for different reasons, despite how similar they are. I had one thing I was going to say, just occasionally you find yourself having one of those New York moments. And the other week, Mark McDonald, who was on the Zodiac episode of the After Movie Diner and who does the Schlock Treatment podcast, me and him met up for lunch. And walking along, trying to find the diner where we were going to have lunch, I was in just one of those moods where I was very excitable, very animated, chatting away, talking or whatever. It was kind of a brisk day, so we were kind of, we had coats on and stuff because it's a nice autumnal day in New York, and I was very animated. We were talking back and forth, and we were being quick, and then we went to a diner that Mark had suggested, and I didn't even know it was going to be like this, but when we went in, it was all like checkerboard floors and like awesome, red leatherette stools and the whole bit. Like it really looked the part, and it was just one of those moments where you're like, oh, I'm having one of those New York times. I need to remind myself of this. It does happen from time to time, but
it restores your faith in the movies. It's like this. It doesn't just happen in the movies.
No, it doesn't. And the other thing we should quickly touch on, I know you have to go, but quickly touch on is the performances in both films by an array of phenomenal actors. It kind of goes without saying, but really, really, really solid, really good.
Yeah, very good. One thing that concerns me about Woody from that era forward is the fact that big names are willing to do his movies. I don't know if that's always a good thing. I felt like the people he worked with in the first half of his career were people he might have been more comfortable with and just worked better with, whereas later on he's able to get these big names and therefore works with them, but is that necessarily best for the part? Specifically like Demi Moore, is she really adding to the movie in a way better than maybe an unknown actress might have?
Yeah, I mean, the Demi Moore appearance is one of the glaring problems with this. Tobey Maguire similarly does not really have the vibe, but certainly not of a young Jewish swinger anyway. But
Kirstie Alley, on the other hand, is amazing. She does a great job.
Yeah, I mean, I think, this is a good crossover movie for that. In the 80s, he had plenty of big stars in his movies, but they seem to either make the parts their own or fit the parts that he wrote very successfully. You have to look at something like Hannah and Her Sisters. There's not a note wrong. There's not a beat wrong in any of those performances, even though someone like Michael Caine was, arguably one of the biggest stars in the world at that point. And, Barbara Hershey and people like that, all great. In Deconstructing Harry, 90% of the cast are great. I love seeing Stanley Tucci do what he does. I even don't mind Elizabeth Shue in the role. She's fine. Judy Davis.
Yeah, I think she does great. Yeah, Judy Davis, Billy Crystal, yeah. So it's a minor...
Bob Balaban, of course, is incredibly deadpan and wonderful.
Oh, yeah, that guy's great. He's in a lot of the movies.
He's in Christopher Guest's... he's one of Christopher Guest's regulars.
Yeah, he's real good.
So I love all that cast. I agree. The stunt casting is creeping in, and you would get that again in the future with a lot of people showing up on things. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, and he does replace actors though. Interestingly, there's a long history of him hiring famous people to do a role, them not working out, and him replacing them. There's a long history of that happening. So it's not like he just plows on forward because he happens to have DiCaprio in his film or whatever,
Yeah. It just feels almost a little bit, Woody's enjoying his celebrity to the detriment of his artistry to some degree. I mean, Stardust-Memories, neither one of the leading ladies were very well known or had done too much. It's certainly not in America prior to that movie. And I like it. I like that better for that reason.
Yeah, I mean, the big standout in Stardust is that it's one of the few, again, main roles that Jessica Harper has done, who is famous, of course, from the Dario Argento movie Suspiria and the sequel to Rocky Horror Picture Show, Shock Treatment, where she takes over the Janet role.
Is she Dory?
No, she plays Daisy, the kind of...
the violinist, yeah.
Violinist.
Yeah.
Oh, and again... That's the other thing. She's a violinist for the Philharmonic, and in Deconstructing Harry, she's a concert violinist.
And yet you don't get bored. He he does he does a riff on the same motif, if you will, and yet it comes out with a very different movie. It's almost what Melinda and Melinda is supposed to be. Right. You could put Deconstructing Harry and Stardust-Memories, cut them, intercut them, and you'd have a long version of Melinda and Melinda.
Yeah, agreed. Definitely. But both great films. Both films that people wouldn't really, if you think of Woody Allen, you wouldn't necessarily think Stardust-Memories and Deconstructing Harry unless your name was Matt Farley or John Cross. But we want you to now think of that when you think Woody Allen. Watch them, love them, and never let them go. That's how I feel, right? Am I right, sir? Can I get an amen?
Amen. Amen to that. This has been great. Thank you very much, and I'll do this again anytime.
Yeah, sure, man. Well, I'm so glad we finally got you on the show as a contributing critical guest as opposed to an interview subject or commenting on your movie. Not that those other occasions weren't also fantastic, but it's nice to have you finally on to gnaw away at some films.
It's a thrill, and I've listened to every episode of The Diner. It's fantastic. I'm a long walker, and it's gotten me through many miles, so keep it going.
Indeed. So now plug all your stuff quickly before you go, sir.
Watch a movie called Local Legends on YouTube. Just search for Local Legends movie. It'll probably come up. And go to moturnmedia.com to learn more. And
follow you on Twitter at Moten Media.
Yeah, and we got a podcast, Shock Marathons podcast. It's the type of podcast that copiers of the After Movie Diner would make.
Not at all. It's short and to the point and perfectly professional. Lastly, just plug your music, sir. If people, because this guy, you don't know, does thousands and thousands of songs. Check out his episode of The Bone Zone if you want to find out what's going on. Go listen to them, and the Matt Farley episode where you did a full episode. But plug some of your music very quickly, sir.
I just reached the 14,000 song mark last week. I've written songs, working on writing a song about pretty much every topic you could think of. My main bands are Paparazzi and the Photogs, where I do celebrity songs, and the Toilet Bowl Cleaners, where I do potty humor songs, and the Passionate and Objective Joker Fan, where I sing about music.
Yeah, so please do check all those out on iTunes, CD Baby, and a whole raft of other places.
All right, sir. Well, thank you very much.
Take care of yourself, sir. You have a good afternoon, and we'll speak again soon.
All right, peace.
And to play out the show this week, I've got a couple of tracks from Moes-Haven. It's one of Matt's bands, and they're available on Amazon, iTunes, CD Baby, and you can even stream them on Spotify. So please do, if you like the songs on the show, go support an independent artist doing great work, and download, listen to, stream, whatever, his tracks on Spotify, iTunes, Amazon, CD Baby, and wherever music is sold. Moes-Haven and Matt Farley will be there. So please check that out. Check out moturnmedia.com as well. And here are the tracks, and that's the end of the show. Thank you.
Baby, the days are getting shorter. Come on over and see me, that's in order. I tape the news on my VC recorder. Time to turn back the clock, said the reporter. I took a shower, I've got the power to love you for an extra hour. Because it's daylight savings, baby. Between the hours of 2 and 3, I'll be loving you and you'll be loving me. When 3 o'clock strikes, it's like it's never been. We'll turn the clocks back and do it over again. Now that I've showered, I'm shaving, and baby, I'm craving to love you, baby, all through daylight savings. Daylight savings, baby. When we arise at 8, it's gonna feel more late. We'll be relaxed and fine, cause our internal clocks will think it's 9. But what is time? I think it's a crime, chronicling the passage of the gift God gave. I'll never ever be a slave to the seconds. Now come on over, baby, 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 you've been beckoned to spend daylight savings in my arms. Daylight savings, baby, in my arms. I just found love, it's like the sunrise, and I wanna live this morning again. All the days before we met were filled with dark skies. Then she turned her love light on, and now my skin's a healthy bronze. With the curtains drawn, the neighbors can't look in. Oh, I don't know if our love will grow, but I'm pretty sure that it won't shrink. My best forecast is that it will last. It's not gonna burn out in a blink. I just found love and it's contagious. I've been infected since the morning we met. All the things I think about are so outrageous. Like a pan full of our loving that I cook up in the oven and share with those less fortunate. Oh, I don't know if our love will float, but I'm pretty sure that it won't sink. My best forecast is that it will last. It's not gonna burn out in a blink. I just found love and it's transplendent. It really put the wind in my sails. I wanna buy her a nice chain and a pendant. A diamond ring is better yet. It gets us closer to the wedding and us happily like fairy tales.
Like the show? Well, you can find our complete podcast archive over at amdpodcast.blogspot.com or aftermoviediner.com. You can send us an email at aftermoviediner@gmail.com, tweet us at aftermoviediner, or follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/aftermoviediner. Or why not be a part of the show and leave us a voicemail over at speakpipe.com/aftermoviediner. You can also support the show a number of ways by spreading the word to family, friends and co-workers, by writing us a review over at iTunes or TalkShoe, by purchasing some excellent diner merchandise over at cafepress.com/aftermoviediner, by donating on our website, by advertising with our website, or maybe you're a regular Amazon user. If so, then before you make a purchase, go to amdpodcast.blogspot.com, aftermoviediner.blogspot.com, or aftermoviediner.com and click through the Amazon banner ads. It costs you nothing extra, but they throw us a few coins for the trouble. Or, like the movies we cover, then buy them over at our personal Amazon store, also on amdpodcast.blogspot.com. Really, thanks everybody for everything you continue to do, and please keep listening.
There are men. And then there are second unit podcast men. The podcast you've just been listening to is part of the Second Unit Podcast Network. Find all of our shows at 2upn.blogspot.com or on Facebook under the Second Unit Podcast Network. Our fantastic list of shows include Drunk on VHS, We Came from the Basement, No Budget Nightmares, The After Movie Diner, Dr. Action and the Kick-Ass Kid, and Bloodbaths and Boomsticks. Take one podcast into the shower. Don't be a blithering idiot, Alan. We can give you the multiple podcast cleansing system all in one place that your hair deserves. Our programming is available across all platforms, from iTunes to Podomatic, TalkShoe to Stitcher, so you have absolutely no excuse. Listen today, and a free naked person of your choice will be shipped from Thailand to your door in a matter of weeks. The Second Unit Podcast Network, bringing you the action and leaving the boring stuff to the other guys. Bloody hell. Who does a girl have to blow around here to get a decent beverage?